In the Gun, episode 91, and I'm Schuyler Callihan filling in for Wes Uhler as he's still making his way across country from Las Vegas. If you haven't caught up with that news, the Steelers plane had a little issue, so I'm filling in for him tonight. I was a starting pitcher back in the day, so I'm not used to this whole relief stuff, so we'll see how I do coming out of the bullpen this week for Wes. But in the Gun here with Jed Drenning and the Runaway Beer Truck, Owen Schmidt. Before we get started, a word from BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Make sure you go and get the latest odds and lines and matchup reports there on BetOnline. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Jed and Owen, a lot going on here in the top 25 this past week. It was finally the first time we actually had some top 25 matchups to really actually talk about, dive into. We'll get Big Daddy in here in a little bit to talk more about West Virginia, Texas Tech also. But just hitting on the top 25, everyone was talking about this Colorado-Oregon matchup, right? And Oregon's been the darling of college football here in the first couple weeks of the season. We all knew that this was going to come to an end at some point, but holy crap. Like Colorado just put it to them. And I love the Dan Lanning. I don't know if you guys saw the video of Dan Lanning before the game's little pregame speech about it. We're not doing this for clicks. We're here to do it on the field. That was pretty awesome. And even at halftime, he said 35-6. It was like 35-6 or something. He's like, we're not done. So they only got one more touchdown, but I think the message was well received for Deion in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean that was a heck of a statement, and just seeing that clip of him. This isn't for the clicks. We do this for the wins. And Oregon absolutely just steamrolled them. The thing I see with Colorado, you got to be able to run the ball. And that's something they lack. I think on the season, the quarterback runs is like negative 97 yards or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So they need to learn how to run the ball a little bit. But, I think everybody kind of knew at some point, this would happen. Maybe not so much like this, but it comes in every sorts of form and fashion, and Colorado takes it on the chin, but it is what it is. And I love what Deion's response is. Hey, this is the worst we're going to be.
Yeah,
right?
There's some nuance to all this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked a few weeks back when people were saying, what in the world is College Game Day going to Colorado State and Colorado for? What'd we say? Because of timing.
Strike when the iron's hot.
Looking ahead. They're looking ahead, and they want to stay ahead of the posse and seize this while it's hot before they take one on the chin. And that's exactly what they did. Now, I'll say this about what Dan Lanning said. Dan Lanning was throwing shade a couple weeks ago before they played. If Colorado is staying in the same conference as Oregon, they do not release that video from that locker room. That doesn't happen. No way in the world does that happen. I mean, that violates every norm in the history of coaching. You do not give your enemy that much to feed on in perpetuity. But with going off in their direction and Oregon going off in theirs, why not? Right? They were saying, what do we have to lose here? Let's go ahead and throw some shade. Let's toss it their way. Travis Hunter's their best player. He on both sides of the ball, maybe. He was out, but he doesn't account for a 36-point difference. Just like Owen said. He's not going to help you run the football. Now, you got USC coming to Boulder. I think that's more looking in the mirror for Colorado. USC's defense has improved, but it's not Oregon's defense. And I think Colorado might be able to score some points against USC, but I just don't think Colorado hasn't stopped anybody yet. And I certainly don't think they're going to stop Caleb Williams in USC. So tough sledding ahead. And Deion has to understand, and he's a very savvy guy. He wants that locker room following him, belly crawling through hell, over shards of glass. But they're not going to continue to do that if just to get back at what the other coach is saying, you're telling the other coach how bad your players are. You better get me now because my players really suck, and we won't suck forever. Dude, be careful what you're saying. Your kids hear what you're saying, and you're right. This is as bad as you'll be, but you don't need to be saying that so your own locker room hears it. But again, who am I to counsel Deion? So there's a lot of moving parts here. Everything they do, everything they say is one of the bigger stories in college football, including, getting curb stomped by 36 points. That's one of the bigger stories in college football. They'll get better. They'll be able to score on most of the teams they face. Oregon just didn't happen to be one of those teams.
And it may not be the last time that this happens to them too. They got USC coming up. They've got some tough games. Pac-12 is really good this year, guys. Like,
Yeah, it is.
And we've talked about it.
They don't match up with at all. They don't match up with Utah at all.
Yeah, that could be a game where it gets out of hand.
That's one right there.
Physically. Because that's the biggest issue with Colorado is the trenches. They are terrible up front.
Brooks, no nonsense. I mean, everything you saw Dan Lanning say and do, that's what Kyle Whittingham does without saying it.
Yeah. And I know that these two, well, one of them's not in the conference, the same conference as West Virginia anymore. One of them has never been in the same conference, but it's a game that a lot of people like to pay attention to. Virginia Tech and Marshall. How about this? Well, actually, just we'll talk about the rivals real quick. How about a weekend for West Virginia fans? You not only win, but you see Pitt go down again. They're 1-3. Their only loss or their only win is an FCS opponent in Wofford. Virginia Tech loses to Marshall. They're 1-3. Their only win is against an FCS opponent. I mean, this is like a Mountaineer weekend dream.
Saturday night, Schuyler.
They play together.
Yeah, they play each other at Lane Stadium in Blacksburg.
So, someone's got to be 1-4.
Yeah, and Pitt remains in 15th place in the Big 12. The Big 12 standings. They're the only 0-2 team in the Big 12. So,
this interesting fact that I did, because I did ESPN Blacksburg Radio I do it every Monday. Talk Panthers, West Virginia, and I dug up an interesting stat. In the last 2 years, Virginia Tech is 1-9 in Power 5 games. That's worse than Rutgers and Vanderbilt. That shows you how far Virginia Tech has fallen in the last few years.
Yeah, they've struggled, man.
There's a pair of 4-0 teams in Virginia playing Power 5 FBS football, and neither one of them are Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Lastly, before we start getting into this West Virginia Texas Tech game, Notre Dame Ohio State 17-14, very low scoring game. I thought it was funny the little back and forth that fake Lou Holtz and the real Lou Holtz had leading up to that game, and then Ryan Day kind of coming back at the real Lou Holtz by saying that his team wasn't physical enough. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they were really that physical, but they found a way to win at the end, 17-14. That hurt a lot of people that bet Notre Dame in this game. They had them plus the points. But interesting, because I thought when we talked to Phil on Friday, Jet, he was going right down the list. He was like, yep, Notre Dame's better here, better here, better here, better here. And I agreed with him. I said they won the game outright with ease, and they just could not get going offensively.
No, they couldn't. And
yeah.
And here's what I see. When I didn't question Ohio State's toughness.
Hey, let me get the elephant out, though, real quick, Jed.
Go ahead.
Okay. Look, you might be tough, but anyone's tough when you're playing 11 against 10, okay?
That's true.
Now they said they came up with a signal in case they only have 10 on defense. What?
Oh
you need a signal? But I never questioned Ohio State's toughness until Ryan Day said that. Yeah. And as soon as he said that, I was like, how thin-skinned is Ohio State? That you hear that much noise from your Ohio State.
Buddy, he was salty.
That much noise from the outside.
He's feeling it.
He was feeling it. He was borderline a little too aggressive when he was talking about it too. I was like,
I question their toughness now. I really do. I'm like, Michigan is in your head. I mean,
bad.
Wow. I mean, I never thought twice about it until Ryan Day said that, and I was like, dude, you're Ohio State. Act like it. Talk like it. I mean, can you imagine Nick Saban saying something like that? He does it for a reason. Speaking of Nick Saban, guys, if you ever question how quarterback-centric this modern game has truly become, all you got to do is look at two of the biggest brands in the sport, Ohio State and Alabama. And you always just took for granted there'd be another Bryce Young. There'd be another top 5 quarterback. There'd be another C.J. Stroud. Soon as there isn't, as soon as they're merely as an incredibly talented quarterback, but not a top 5 quarterback, look at the struggles Alabama and Ohio State are having offensively, simply because, I mean, they have Ohio State probably has 2 of the top 5 receivers in the country. There's talk Marvin Harrison might be the number 2 overall pick. They're talented at every position, except they're not quite what they were at quarterback. And look at them. It looks like a different team offensively. That's how quarterback centric this game has become.
Yeah,
It is.
I agree.
It is. And I still think it's funny, though. Ryan Day going after 86-year-old Lou
I know.
Holtz.
That's just,
Hey,
Oh,
Lou
my
Holtz
God.
is out there, and Lou Holtz is saying, Ohio State, you are not tough, man.
come on, man. The other one I would want to mention, Schuyler, and it's just because there were such insane numbers coming out of it.
Yeah.
It is Penn State shutting out
I
Iowa.
knew you were going there. Yeah.
Dude,
Penn
brutal.
State ran 97 offensive plays.
Yeah,
Iowa ran,
Crazy.
ready for this? Ran 33.
Yeah.
33. Somebody posted something on Twitter. I'm trying to remember how long it's been since there had been a 60 play deficit with one team versus another team. 97 plays to 33. That is a neat trick.
You're probably talking about like one of the service academies doing that, maybe. You don't see that from like an ordinary offense.
It's incredibly difficult to do that. First of all, you don't see Penn State running 97 plays.
Yeah, first of all, you're going to see like a 70 play average amongst most teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
to have almost 30 plus on that and then to shut them out almost 40, especially Iowa. You know, I mean, I was blown away by the end result of that game. I figured there'd be a little, you know, Iowa's the defensive team. They're the black and golds, right? They're the steel curtain of college football. But man, Penn State, hey, they're for real.
They are.
They're absolutely for real. And so are Iowa's offensive problems. And for a West Virginia analyst to sit here and talk about somebody else's offensive problems, they're real. They're real. Okay? Yeah.
That definitely tells you a lot. But like you said, that Penn State loss, I mean, that's the only one you got right now after West Virginia. We're going to dive into here in a minute. But like, got to feel pretty good about where this team is, despite all those offensive struggles that they've had. They found a way to win these games. Years past, I'm not sure that's the case. So 3-1 is West Virginia. As we get into our recap of the game here, thank you to Toothman Ford. If you haven't yet, go to Grafton. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. Pick yourself up a vehicle. Maybe make the long cross-country trip out to TCU this week. And I know Wes was talking about making the short drive from TCU or from Dallas to Houston, or the other way around. But anyways,
He'll be in Houston with the Steelers if he ever finally made it back from Las Vegas with the Steelers. He was texting us all afternoon. We're taping this on Monday, and he texted me like 1:00, and I'm like, "Hey, how was the trip, dude? I'm in Kansas City." Like, I got done watching that game 13 hours ago. He's like, "Yeah, we've been on the plane since then."
So
I don't know if you haven't heard, if you've been in a cave somewhere, the Steelers plane, their charter had some sort of oil pressure issue, so they had to make an emergency landing in Kansas City. And typically, for whatever twisted, weird reason, if Owen, you've probably been involved in some of that, I know I have. The protocol typically dictates you can't get off those flights, so you're stuck on them on the tarmac, and it is treacherous. So Wes finally made it back to Pittsburgh. No harm, no foul. But that's where he is. For those wondering, as Schuyler mentioned earlier, I mean, what a journey from Milan to Minsk to Vegas! That holy cow! But now he goes to Houston, and he's actually talking about the possibility of, should I rent a car in Houston and zip up to DFW to Fort Worth to maybe check to Amon G. Carter to check out the game and get back at 3:00, and then he has pregame before the Steelers. Wow, dude's nuts, man. He's nuts.
He is nuts. He is nuts.
Speaking of J.R. Toothman, Owen,
hey, JR,
you got to run him, didn't you?
Yeah, JR caught me in beer truck fashion at the end of the game. He caught me on film. It actually got caught some traction there for the rebel yell I let out after the big stop on that fourth down play, which sealed the deal against Texas Tech game here on Saturday. It was good stuff, man. It was good stuff.
Yeah, so Wes will not be stuck on the tarmac when he is back for the West Virginia TCU preview here in a couple of days. But let's dive right into this, guys. We'll go a few minutes here, and then we'll get into Big Daddy. West Virginia beating Texas Tech 20-13. Again, ugly. Wasn't the prettiest way to win. But again, at this point in the game for Neil Brown, it's not about how you win, how sexy it is. It's just about getting that result. They found a way to do it these last 2 weeks, with Nico Marchiol, the redshirt freshman quarterback, doing just enough to kind of keep the offense somewhat going, I guess you can say. The running game didn't even really have its best day either, I didn't think, even though they ran for 157 yards is only 3.7 yards a carry. So there's a lot of stuff to build on. But how about that defense, guys? Like, holy crap, did they play their lights out, their tails off?
I mean, Jed and I were kind of just talking here about an hour ago, and he made the comment, isn't it great that you can win and still be figuring things out on offense?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not, I'm not gonna say it's a train wreck, but they gotta find their way. They're gonna have to find their way. We can't get away with that all season long, but defense coming up huge. I mean, those guys have literally taken the team on their back and made it through these last couple games. Proud of those guys, and they're starting to kind of come out of their shell a little bit. You see in that confidence on defense, especially in the secondary. Those guys are coming alive, and if you saw some of the plays they were making, I mean, boys were screaming. I mean, it was fun watching those guys fly around.
There's no doubt about it. And what that game reminded me of, and I remember when Neil was hired, I wanted to know anything and everything about this guy we were getting from Troy, Alabama, that was a receiver at Kentucky and UMass. So I did a very thorough deep dive.
By the way, love that picture you sent of Neil in college, and it was like, hey, we're climbing again,
somebody
boys.
posted that. Yeah. So one of the things I'd done when Neil was hired, or when it appeared imminent that he would be, I did a deep dive into everything that he'd done as a head coach at Troy, and studied each of those games. I went and watched the pressers, the post game, the pre-game, and got a sense of who he was and what the vibe in each of those games was. And this game reminded me in so many ways, guys, of in 2018, his final year at Troy. As a double-digit underdog, he took Troy up to Lincoln, Nebraska, and upset Nebraska 24-19 in front of 80-some thousand, Cornhusker fans. And it was ugly. It was rough around the edges. They had 250 some yards offense, but they played very opportunistic third down defense. They made just enough plays from the special team standpoint. There was nothing really flashy about it. It was just swelling up at the right times in the game. And I couldn't help but think, as this game was unfolding, it reminded me of that Troy win over Nebraska. It was that same kind of template. And we were -2 in turnover now, in turnover margin. Now, this isn't something you strive for by any stretch, but sometimes you find yourself in a game and you haven't executed as efficiently on offense, and you've coughed it up once or twice, or made some poor decisions in the throw game, as we did. And meanwhile, the defense isn't snatching the football the way you want them to, and you find yourself on the business end of a turnover margin. Well, that doesn't mean you throw in the towel and give up. You got to battle and find your way over the course of 60 minutes to claw back and win that game, or to claw ahead and win that game despite the disadvantage in turnover margin. And what struck me, I got to thinking about it. This was the 4th year in a row that we won a game -2 in turnover margin. And
That's crazy.
That's irregular. It's not something you want to do. Okay. But if you find yourself in that situation, it's a tough situation to be in. But first they'll hit the offense, then I'll go to the defense. You obviously have to start with Nico. I liked the way that they got things rolling, even right out of the chute. When they started with a smash route to the left, so the southpaw gets to roll left with a very basic. Now, for those who've never played quarterback and read a smash route, when you're facing any version of a host of soft coverages, there's going to be a flat player that has to buzz that flat. A smash route is the wideout, basically runs a 5-yard stop or smash or hitch, whatever you want to call it. It's coached different ways. And the slot is going to run some version of a post corner / flag. And you're going to high-low the defender responsible for that flat area of the field. Well, if they're in a soft coverage, it's too much for the flat player to get there quickly on that quick hitch or smash. So pre-snap, hey, I got an easy 5-yard completion. He's going to spin and miss a tackle. It's 9 yards on my first play of the game. I love the fact that's how he started it off play action. Gave Nico an easy completion. And then right after that, boom, play number 2. What do we do, Owen? We get him involved in the run game, get him hit, run his own read. You really wake up and you're part of the game once you have contact made. So 2 plays into the game, and he's kind of lathered up and ready to go. Now, we can talk all the live long day about the inability to push the football vertical and the lack of plays made on the perimeter. And even in the second half, I would say the lack of plays made by the running back room that we have such faith in, right? I think the only consistent piece of the offense all day was the O-line, starting with Zach Frazier. But when you look at Nico, and you look at what he demonstrated, first of all, I think fans are starting to get a sense. They've heard us say, well, Garrett's the twitchy, explosive one. Nico's the strong, slippery one, right? Well, I think through the better part of 2 games, they now have a sense of what we mean by that. You very much can see he's a handful. He's 224 pounds. He's deceptively large. He's physical and he's strong. He's tough to bring down. Arm tackle is not going to do it. Yep. And multiple times in the run game, you saw him make Texas Tech pay with that skill set and that ability. But what stuck out to me the most was when Texas Tech closed the gap to 13-10. And this is what I was talking to Owen about. There are so many of parts of Nico's game. I want to talk about the drive when it was 13-10 and what that meant to me. There are so many parts of Nico's game that at his age and his stage in his career, a lot of things still need to slow down. Okay, your sundry drive in the middle of the first quarter in a scoreless game. His reads need to slow down. He needs to do a much crisper job of focusing on his read keys, understanding certain rotations on the back end, understanding his quick answer throws. All these things need to slow down. You see a massive ceiling in what he can be. But the area of the game that doesn't need to slow down, and I think is already at nearly a 400 level, is the situational awareness he demonstrates. In critical points in a football game, he understands when he took the field when it was 13-10 after Texas Tech scored, he recognized the critical nature of that specific possession. Yep. And he said, you know what? I'm going to will us down the football field. And watching that's daggone near what he did with his legs, with his arm. He cashes in with the throw to Big Cole Taylor, puts us back up 20-10. And I really like the fact, guys, that when we got the ball back and we needed another drive like that, we needed another drive to chew clock, move the chains, keep Texas Tech off the field. Now we were nursing a 7-point lead. What's the first play we ran? We took a shot play to E.J. Horton. We trusted Nico, and Nico delivered a great ball on that too. So we opened up going for the win. We weren't playing not to lose. We were playing to win. Neil was calling plays to win. He was being aggressive, leaving nothing on the field. So that's what I saw out of Nico. Now, when you go to the other side of the ball, first of all, it was so critical for us in this game, not just because of what's played out in the previous 4 games with us falling in this massive hole after the first quarter, but they were a first quarter team all year. They'd outscored the opposition 45-15 with a bunch of fast starts. That's what they do. They game plan well. They jump on you with a quick script. Next thing you know, you're down by 10 or 14 points and you're in a trail position. The defense, I think, forced 3 and outs in the first 4 possessions. So they came right out of the chutes like lions. And that made such a huge, huge difference in the overall flow, certainly of the first half. And it was needed because that goodwill and collateral we built in the first half by building that 10-point lead with such exceptional defense was sorely needed in the second half when that same defense was on the field for 58 plays in one half. That's the most snaps in one half since the 2018 loss in Stillwater with Giddy's defense on the field, 53 plays. So that was, we were really reaching. You saw hands on hips. We were running on lower tanks toward the end. You heard Neil talk in his presser about the tackling wasn't as solid at the end of the game. The technique wasn't as solid. Well, Owen, you know this better than anybody. What happens when you get tired? What's the first thing to disintegrate? Technique, right? Technique starts to erode and disintegrate. You started to see
playing higher. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you started to see some of that. Now, I think what happened with Tyler Shuck, here's how the critical role I think that played in the outcome of the game. Tyler Shuck was going to be a big part of the run game, first of all. They believe in Q power. He's a big physical kid. They like doing it. So when he gets knocked out of the game and Baron Morton comes in, I had some Mountaineer fans saying, whoa, that's the same guy that carved us up in Lubbock last year. I don't want to face him. I'd rather face the other guy. Not so fast. And here's why I say that. First of all,
hey, real quick, Jed, before you,
Jed,
real quick. Hey, how tough is that kid, by the way?
To take that snap like that? That was
dude. I was like, are you kidding me, dude? I think the bone was like
bone out of his ankle.
I was like, dude, this guy is it was crazy, man. I was like, this kid is a warrior, man.
And then he's getting wheeled off on the gurney, giving the guns up to the crowd. I was like,
yeah,
holy cow!
I know, right, man.
Owen. You are right. So what I was thinking, Baron Morton comes in the game, the same kid that carved us up last year. First of all, if I'm Zach Kitley and I'm calling that game now, and if I'm Joey McGuire, the head coach for Texas Tech, guess what's not going to play as big a role in my game plan as I initially
Quarterback run.
Yes. I'm not going to my number 3 kid and get my number 2 hurt. That's point number 1. Point number 2, when we played them last year, they were coming off not just a loss, but they had a bye week following the Oklahoma State loss. 3 out of the last 4 games against us, they had a bye week. So they had 2 weeks to put together a great plan to put Baron Morton in a great position to flourish and succeed against us at home. And they did it. That game plan last year, I thought it was offensive wizardry by Zach Kitley. Baron Morton's a good player, but Zach Kitley didn't ask much of Baron Morton. It was a lot of shifting, a lot of motions, a lot of window dressing, formation to the boundary, quads, creating single coverage. They threw 14 screen passes against us. It was all a matter of quick read and throw it, quick read and throw it, quick read and throw it, setting the table with movement and motion and all these exotic looks to make life easy for his young quarterback. Well, guess what you can't do when your young quarterback's been taking the number 2 snaps and he comes stone cold off the bench? He doesn't know those formations and motions, just like Nico against Pitt. That part of the game plan was lost when Garrett left and Nico came in. You have to sacrifice certain things at the altar of reps. And when you're only getting 25% of the reps as the number 2, you can't master the nuances and timing of all those motions, all those shifts. You can't do that. It's not as easy. There's not enough time and practice. In the 20-hour NCAA rule, it's difficult to do that. Baron Morton encountered the same thing this year. So whereas last year he was getting all those reps with the ones, and that great plan and that great strategy with all those exotic looks was a central part of what they were doing to make his life easier. I couldn't help but notice very quickly when he came in the game, it was a lot more basic, and I would even call it vanilla. If you come from a spread background like me and Owen, vanilla type stuff. Very basic motions, like a round motion. We used to call it dick motion, Owen, remember? Just to check if they were a man or in zone, because if you draw it up on the board, what's it look like, right? And then a lot of rip and Liz formations with basic 10 personnel. You have 4 wides, 1 back, so it's twins right, twins left. It was pretty vanilla stuff by comparison to what they ran with Baron Morton last year. So it was much more difficult, and he had to earn it the hard way. And that's why I'm all the more impressed by what they were able to do, stringing those drives together in the second half. Now, part of it was they were 2 for 18 on third down. So I always shoot through a filter. We go for it on fourth down more than anybody in the Big 12 this year. Neil's very aggressive, more aggressive than Texas Tech. One of the storylines, and it was a misconception last week, was, Texas Tech goes for it on fourth down. I'm like, no. The storyline is this. Let's do some research and take it up a notch. They went for it on fourth down a bunch last year. The story is, why aren't they doing so this year? And through 3 games, they hadn't been. I think Oregon on the field 4th and 2 on Texas Tech's own 30 almost scared him out of it a bit. But he'd only attempted 6 fourth downs coming into the West Virginia game. Well, lo and behold, they returned to form. They attempted 8. By the nature of the game, the way it was unfolding, they were in a desperate position. So because they were 2 of 18 on third down, and by the way, I did the research, the last time a West Virginia defense had 16 third down stops in one game was the 2011 backyard brawl with Jeff Castile.
Wow.
So it doesn't happen often. Often.
That makes sense, though.
On third down, but they were 5 of 8 on fourth down. So you always ask yourself, you look at that 2 ways. Well, that 2 of 18 is a little misleading because these guys tend to say, if it's 3rd and 8, I'm not going for the first down. I'm going for 4th and 4. I want half of it back. So it's a little misleading. I'm like, well, that's true. But guess who put them in the 3rd and 8? We did. So we still get credit, right? I'm not giving them a free pass because of that. So when you look at everything that we did, forcing them into these inopportune situations and long yardage situations and transition downs, to me, that's what dictated more than anything. That's how you finish -2 and win the game. And Owen, you talked about the DBs. Here's some numbers and metrics to connect to what you're seeing on tape. When I'm watching tape, I'm watching Beanie Bishop play the ball. When I'm watching tape, I'm watching Aubrey Brooks, as an incredible open field tackler, and he's playing the ball in flight. And you know what? Malachi, again, he's a dog. That's what he is. Malachi's the guy that, a buddy of mine that I played at Glenville with, Chris George, his dad always told him when he was a little kid, there was a big guy that he was like in the 2nd grade, and there was this big guy that was always trying to steal his lunch money. And he said, well, here's what's going to happen, Chris. He said, I'm not going to come into school and talk to anybody. You're going to solve this yourself. And you're going to solve it. That guy knows that if he beats your ass, he's taking your lunch money. Well, just let him know you got to beat my ass every day. I'm never stopping. Okay. That's Malachi Ruffin. That's him. He said, I don't care. I'm coming back. I'm coming and I'm coming and I'm coming. Don't tell me I have limited skill set. I'm aggressive. I'm a corner. That's the mentality I got. That's what I like about that kid. I love that about Malachi Ruffin. So what's happening on the back end? A year ago, guys, we couldn't even get around the football to make a play when the ball was in play. We had 36 passes defended last year, all year, easily the fewest in the Big 12. We ranked 123rd in all of FBS in passes defended with 36. The other night alone, we had 10. For the season, we already have 24. We are playing the ball in flight. It's one thing to cover somebody, but it's something else to react and react properly when the football is in the air and it matters most. That's what this defensive secondary, with the confidence that it's developed, is starting to do. And boy, it couldn't come at a better time. We'll get into this later in the week. You're going to be tested and tested often against this TCU pass game with that very skill. But that's kind of what I see at it, guys. And that's the good and the bad of it. And we go back to what we've said multiple times. You always like coming out of a win with a ton of learning opportunities. And we could be sitting here at 1-3, right? We could be sitting here at 1-3 having these same conversations, but instead we're sitting here at 3-1 talking about we got to get better here. We got to get better. Of course we do. You're not going to achieve the things we want to achieve with the lack of production on the perimeter in the pass game that we're now having, with the inconsistency half to half in the run game that we had on Saturday. There are things you're going to have to do better. The defense is going to have to force some turnovers. I even said in the pregame show with Learfield before the game, one of the things that has to happen, we can't win this football game without picking off a pass. Boy, was I wrong. But the defense, there are going to be games that we can't win without forcing some turnovers. So for all the great things the defense is doing, all the exceptional things, we have the number 1 ranked third down defense in the Big 12 right now. After 4 games, that's a sturdy, robust sample size. We're playing high-level football in a lot of critical areas at all 3 levels of that defense. The next step is start snatching the football and stealing us some possessions. And then on offense, the next step is obviously start making some plays downfield in the pass game and, quite frankly, in the run game. I mean, CJ doesn't have a run of 20 yards yet this year.
Yeah.
For all the good things and exceptional things that he's done. So we need to make more big plays, more splash plays. It's just too hard to make a living putting together 8, 10, 12 play drives. Too many things can go wrong. So you have to build yourself out with some explosive plays and get off the field a little quicker sometime. But there is a lot to be excited about on both sides of the football and in the special teams unit. So at 3-1, I like the fact that we still have a lot of opportunities to get better, whether it's a quarterback, whether it's a receiver, whatever it might be. We're sitting here at 3-1 instead of otherwise having the same conversations.
And those turnovers too, they're even more critical when you have a struggling offense. You have a redshirt freshman quarterback who may or may not be playing again and this weekend and making his first career road start. Now, I know he played a lot in that Oklahoma State game, but this is a whole new deal. You're going into it knowing you're the guy. So you need those turnovers if you can get them. And I think
Garrett will be day to day.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Garrett was in better shape even on Saturday than I thought he'd be by Saturday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, but 2 things travel well, and this is more of a TCU conversation, but the 2 things that traditionally travel well, Owen, defense and run game. And the cherry on top, as Schuyler's saying, if you can snatch a few takeaways and play good defense and run the football, that's the recipe for success on the road. But we'll save
Chef's
that
kiss.
for TCU stuff. But
And I thought Neil did a really good job too of describing that match zone stuff and how they were having problems last year with guys kind of peeking into the backfield, not really focusing on their guys. Now they're kind of playing a little bit tighter and they know what they're actually supposed to be doing on these things. So now it's not, oh no, there's a guy busting loose down the field. It's not happening.
The most critical thing that's happened from streamlining our schemes and our concepts on defense. We spent the entire camp with everybody worried and having this question about will linebacker. Well,
we haven't talked about it.
Come to find out, well, first of all, Lee Kogel was the will linebacker for the vast majority of the Penn State game. And now because they cross-train, Lee and Trey Lathan can swap it out. Why can they swap it out? Because the concepts have been streamlined. Yeah. If it's more convoluted and high-end and more technical, more dialed into a specific run fit at this versus this formation from this spot, it's much more difficult to cross-train and do that. But when you streamline things and allow guys to be aggressive and play downhill, I mean, think about it, Owen. You played in Rich's offense and you played in the West Coast offense. and think of how much more advanced and difficult it was to get to the point that you felt comfortable being aggressive in the West Coast, because there's so much indecision, just wondering if you're going to learn the playbook, right?
There's so much going on in the West Coast offense. And Rich had, for Jed's term, streamlined literally his offense. I mean, you're talking maybe 12 plays out of 12 different formations. That's what it really seemed like the bread and butter was. There wasn't really much going on. So, and in his theory, look, I want my athletes reacting. I don't want them thinking.
Yep.
So that was the big thing. And you can see that on the field. And I think one more thing I'll just add to is, if you want to see those big plays happen, you got to be around the football. Okay, so the bigger runs will come when everybody's around the football, right? And we're blocking, we're doing our stuff downfield, and that's where those big bust runs come from in the backfield, and then vice versa on the back end and the defense, right? Those plays start to happen more when you get comfortable, and now you're taking, not so much risks, but critical thinking risks, like calculated chances, and everybody's flying around to the football, making it happen. So the more you start playing cohesive as a unit and understanding your role is more than just running a route or blocking on a certain play, it's really about playing till the whistle blows and always being around the football. Things are going to start to happen.
We're going to get out of here and jump to Big Daddy, but I'm going to close with this, Owen. Here's where you just nailed something else. You talked about big plays happening offensively once you get more hats around the football. Once you get more assertion and more aggressive play, straining and stretching to block a second defender, right? What's the old saying? A good player gets one, a great player gets two.
It's two, yeah.
Yep.
Right. And so that happens. Big plays happen on offense when that happens. And on the defensive side, it's similar. Turnovers tend to happen when you have hats around the football. And this West Virginia defense does have hats around the football, which is why I have to think at some point we're going to start getting some of those turnovers in bunches.
Yeah, I love the way this front seven has played. They have played absolutely lights out in these first 4 games, and I think they're going to get better. As Neil said in his press conference, this may be one of the best units they've had up front. So we're going to take a break. We're going to get right back to it with Big Daddy, who is the star of the show, apparently, to our YouTube commenters. So we're going to get to a break, and we'll be back with him. So thank you, guys. We'll be right around the corner with Big Daddy. You've been in the Gun.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
For more West Virginia Mountaineer football content, be sure to follow us on Twitter at In the Gun Podcast.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Let's go, Mountaineer fans. You're tuned in to In the Gun with Wes, the Runaway Beer Truck, and the Signal Caller.
And as we promised, we are back with the star of the show, Big Daddy. And I've got to admit, Big Daddy, you are the most famous person in these little squares right here. If you go in the YouTube comments every week, there's somebody saying something about Big Daddy.
Look,
You're Paul Lamb. No, I'm
listen,
definitely dating myself. I have no idea, Big Daddy, if you know what I'm talking about. But
I don't
Hollywood
know what you're
Squares.
talking
Well, I know you don't.
Yeah.
You were born 3 weeks ago. But Hollywood Squares,
I'm
Paul
the-
Lynn was
Yep.
the famous square. You are Paul Lynn.
Here's the thing, though. Jed, you played overseas. You played everywhere. You're like, people know you. Owen is Owen. We don't have to discuss it. I am by far the lesser known out of this group. I just pay the most to get these people to talk about it.
Oh,
And I don't have money. I just do by hook or by crook. Whatever has to happen happens.
But you
Get it
haven't
done.
done it the old way, like how some people create burner accounts and like, oh, this Big Daddy's good. He's not that guy.
I tried a burner
It's
account
legit.
time in 07 when I worked for a website, and it was Football Fatty, and I was so bad at it, like trying to spam post to get people to watch our stuff on our website. I was so bad at it. I was banned off the boards within like a week, and I just gave up. It'll never. What's the
You were
point?
banned off the boards.
Banned off the
Can
boards.
you imagine if we had a message board?
Oh,
I
Listen,
hear stories about those things, and I'm just like, you've got wow. Like my
they're
buddies
get
nightmares.
wild.
our friends.
Yeah, you would know, Schuyler. I couldn't tell you the first thing. My buddies will tell me stories, and I'm like, well, and I do know this. There's that account on Twitter, and it's something about message board madness or something. And this guy captures like message board content from all over the country, and it is just classic. I mean,
we thought it would be a great idea when we first started our site a few years ago to kind of help engage traffic. And we're like 2 weeks into this thing, we're like, we're not doing this. Like, this is ridiculous. Like people go here to take out all their frustration out on us and throwing cuss words and just it's a mess. But anyway,
case in point, the account that I'm talking about on Twitter, I think today is when I saw him. He posted something from a USC message board about this poster. Well, Lincoln Riley's just obviously not the answer. We need to get rid of him, start from scratch.
Yeah.
This just isn't going to work. I mean, did you see how many points we gave up the other night? This guy posts stuff like this every day, and I'm like, this is just delicious.
I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but there used to be an app like circa 2010 called Bowlbound, and I think it may have been tied with ESPN. There was just a bunch of college football fans all in one spot, and I'd get on there all the time, and there was so much back and forth. It got so bad they got rid of the thing.
Were there message boards when you played? I don't remember if there were. I don't know much about it now.
Not. That was before Twitter. It was only Facebook for us old farts, and it was when you had a college account.
But were there message boards?
People got to the message boards back in 05, 06 because that was the only place to go. And it was
I feel like
so they did exist when no one was here.
I feel like the message boards was definitely more old school than it is.
Yes.
Is now. Now it's like mainstream. You're on a site. It's a message board. Before it was like sketchy, like black page that just had script, and you would just see like a name. Sometimes there might be an image or an icon of that person.
Web.
Like, you know anything about them? Did you ever hear about them or?
Buddy, the only thing I went online for was adult content and you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. So you weren't looking up to see who wrote about Owen Schmidt that week. You were
Guys, are they free or do you pay? Again,
the sites, the adult sites are free. Totally.
You would know that. The message board.
We have gone off the rails.
No, message boards were again, that was like you had to pay to do. Yeah. Free ones were trapped.
You had to pay to like write on that stuff.
The good ones.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
And the good adult sites that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thank you here to Fortis, quick curveball here, but for roof performance and financial security guarantee. I can't even focus now. Make sure to visit fortis.us.com. And anyways, I don't know how you transition to the next thing.
Before Owen ends up with an OnlyFans page here.
I'm gonna sell feet pics.
Yeah.
And then when you do, here we are.
Oh my God.
See what you did, Big Daddy? I mean, we were talking top 25.
We were just cruising along.
Self-fulfilling.
What an influence you are.
Oh boy. I needed that laugh, man. Thank you. That was good. That was like my heart feels like it's full now. I got my Big Daddy laughing.
So what was your angle, Big Daddy, on the 4th and 10?
Up top.
Okay.
So I have my finger on the button to play Hypnotized by Biggie as loud as possible.
Yes.
So all I'm doing is wait for the ball to hit the ground. So when I see it go up, I thought I missed something because it was just kind of middle of the field where nothing else was. But I saw the ball hit the ground. They called it. I hit it. And that was that. I blacked out afterwards.
And that was that. For the last 10 seconds, we took a knee. It was very chaotic because normally Big Daddy Montoro, he's down on the sidelines 4 to 5 minutes to go. And here I are coordinating, okay, after Neil, what player, because when we win, I interview Neil and a player straight into it. Well, I hadn't seen Monty because of the way the game ended. I was with Neil down at that end of the field. We're right on the edge of the box. So I didn't even see Monty. And it wasn't until the final gun sounded that I realized, oh, I haven't even seen Monty. What are we going to do here? I guess we'll play it by ear. I'm going to grab Neil. So I grabbed Neil, and it just tells you what kind of guy Neil is. I asked him, I said, do you want to go now? Do you want to wait? He said, let's get it out of the way. Let's go ahead and do it. Yeah, let's talk. So I Pat Sargent, our producer, our engineer, I said, Pat, throw it down. So he has Tony throw it. Next thing you know, I'm talking to Neil. So meanwhile, my head's on a swivel. I see TV with Montoro heading our way. So now I'm gesturing toward Neil. Okay, we got to walk toward TV. I got to cut you loose.
Yeah.
So Neil talks for like 10 seconds. And I said to Tony, hey, Neil's busy down here, very much in demand. And Neil turns back toward me and he says, no, Jed, I'll be back in a minute. We'll finish this up. Okay,
I actually saw that.
Enough. Yeah. And I finally saw Montoro, and then I see Montoro standing there with Nico. And I was like, oh, I guess Nico's who I'm interviewing. All right, fair enough, makes sense. But that whole sequence at the end of the game was just insanity. Like, first of all, when they got the 1st and 10 at the 12, they started all that with 3 timeouts. But right before that, they used their first timeout. I was surprised they didn't run the ball. Okay. And they had 4 straight pass attempts. But I was also thinking to myself, Joey McGuire is pretty good at clock management, right? I mean, this guy, for a guy who was coaching high school ball 7 or 8 years ago, the college clock isn't something that's too large for him. He understands all the nuances of it. I really appreciate that part of the game, even if I had a good high school game, watching a coach manage the clock. But I was thinking to myself, they have all 3 timeouts as they're winding down this drive. What that means, and this is the part nobody's talking about as it happened, they could literally lose the ball on downs here and still have a shot because they could get a quick 3 and out with the 3 timeouts, get the ball back around the 40 or 45, still have a shot. But as soon as he took that first timeout, that's off the table.
Gone. Yeah.
That's gone. So then they throw 4 straight times. But what I noticed, they passed with the switch route, tried to get the tight end up the rail. So they used that quadrant. And then they tried to get behind the backers with the crosser with their backup tight end. So I'm thinking to myself, as a play caller, what else would I do? And I was telling Tony on the broadcast, as this is coming up on 4th down, I said, I would think ball's left hash. I would go formation to the boundary, try and get Jaron Bradley, single him up on somebody they like. I'm going to guess that's going to be Malachi. All right. Well, they ran trips to the boundary to the left. They singled Jaron Bradley up on Malachi, except he wasn't singled. Here comes Aubrey Burks with safety help over top. That indecision is what created the pressure on Baron Morton that forced that errant throw. But see, you were up top watching that whole thing play out, right?
The Beanie Bishop bat down was absolutely unreal.
That was a great play.
And then again, since we're doing game management, every time there's a timeout called, we've got to scramble and figure out what we're going to play or anything like that. So I can enjoy it for a second, but then it's got to be, oh God, okay, what song are we going to do? And then focus on the play again and try to be ready. Biggie, all I want to do every game is hit hypnotize. At moment I think is going to be it. And the last few years, somehow that's always been a 4th down, and it works out because then the place can go nuts and it's chaos.
It was chaos. You know what Neil told the team right before we came out? And I thought, this is pretty clever. It was a good point based on the weather, the nature of the crowd, all that. He said, guys, last week I told you you'd be feeding off the energy of the crowd. And he said, did I lie to you? They're like, no. He's like, this week they're going to need to feed off your energy. You create it and they'll feed off of it. And I keep thinking of guys like you, that's your job, is to create that energy in the crowd and help the team fire everybody up.
I want to see Owen's reaction to this. I found out this weekend, I got a text. I went back and I checked Twitter, and it's accurate. Kevin Nash, Diesel, from the NWO WWE, knows about our NWO defense video and has retweeted it back out into the world. So
wow,
awesome. Oh, really?
The wrestling mark in me is absolutely elated. And now every team for the rest of the season to see if we can do anything. So I told Chris O that this morning, and he just stood in the hallway for about 2 minutes. I had to go to the press conference. I just left him to be with his thoughts to figure it all out. So apparently Kevin Nash knows
That is awesome.
Bischoff. I haven't seen anything from Bischoff, but come to us. Let us old wrestling marks enjoy what our majesty was back in 98, 99.
Let's give a round of applause for Big Daddy and his team, because if you think about it, that the atmosphere for Texas Tech, I wasn't there for that, but the Pitt game, we hadn't talked about it because we did it, I think, after the fact. We actually posted the video. I got a video of the Rasheed Marshall video.
Oh, that was you, Rasheed.
Yeah.
That video, by the way,
that was amazing. Everybody that had been looking for that video, we put it up. You could just hear as soon as he said in Pitt, like everyone just was like waiting to see what he was about to say. When he dropped the line, it was like, oh,
and fan
it was
base
fantastic.